How do I train to have better endurance capacity?
Cliff, thank you for that question. If you're a longtime listener, you have an idea of what the answer is going to be, and that answer is that
Depends.
it depends.
Classic.
And when I was in undergrad in exercise science, I would have had a very clear-cut, simple answer for you that would not have been complete. Because that's what I realized is undergrad education, at least in the science departments and in health, they give you enough information to have these conversations, but they don't give you enough information to help make it complete. So typically what would be said is that, well, you have to use specificity, which is true. You have to use that principle of specificity of improving your endurance. And you have to improve your VO2 max. And most of the time, improving your VO2 max happens at lactate threshold. So that would be the exercise science answer, is you have to train at lactate threshold and spend some time there. And that's how you'll build endurance. As I've gone on and I've gotten to learn much more, and I've gotten to have conversations with Chris Henshaw, the world's top aerobic capacity coach, one big thing that I've learned from him, I've learned a lot from him, but one main thing I've learned from him is that we have capacity and endurance in the lactate threshold for every movement, which I did not think of that before. Like, we have a threshold for the volume of squatting that we can do. We have a threshold for the volume of deadlifting. We have a threshold for the amount that we can cycle. We have a threshold for the amount we can row, the amount that we can run. And working on one may have a little bit of transfer over to the other ones, but it's not enough specificity in order to gain the goal, depending on what your goal is. So Cliff, that's where it comes into, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to improve squat endurance and capacity, then going out for a bunch of runs may help a little bit, but what'll help more, and this is something that we do in our training for CrossFit because you need a lot of squatting endurance, especially for competitions, is that we hit a heavy set, and then in between those reps, instead of resting and sitting around, we'll do body weight air squats at a very slow pace to just increase our volume and our capacity while working at a higher intensity to gain that accumulation over time. So now with that being said, I want to switch gears a little bit, because that's true for squatting, for bench pressing, for deadlifting, that if you want to work endurance and capacity, you have to work endurance and capacity with that specific movement. But then we get into the ability to recover between efforts. Your ability to recover between efforts in a sport like Spartan racing or CrossFit, or even going on a half marathon or marathon, you're going up a hill, your heart rate's going to spike, the intensity is going to spike, then you get to flat, and then you go downhill. So you're going to have these peaks. And for your body to recover and clear out the hydrogen ions and the lactate that's accumulating, you need to have a good aerobic system. And to have a good aerobic system, one of the best modalities for that is running and building up your running endurance to build up your overall system's ability to buffer out these hydrogen ions. So to summarize that, if you asked me this when I was getting my bachelor's, I would say improve your VO2 max and train near lactate threshold so that you keep getting that your body's ability to buffer the lactate better. Now, I would still say that, but I would say specifically with the movement that you want to train endurance capacity with. And then I would say, and furthermore, if you're going into an event that has multiple events throughout the day or the weekend, then overall we need to improve your entire aerobic capacity to help with recovery efforts in between that.
When I think of endurance, I think of the things that you listed in regards to like running, like long distances or cycling long distances, marathons, triathlons, all of that. And so I love that you used the opposite example of like squats and lifting and things like that, but then you also brought it back to, but you can do both and you can have endurance in both, because for me, I'm currently training for a CrossFit competition. So I need to have strength endurance, but I also need the aerobic capacity right now in order to recover, because there's going to be 3 to 5 events per day, most likely. And so like it's a 2-day event, I could have 10 events in 2 days. So I need to be able to recover. And so a lot of my training currently is, yes, having the strength endurance, but also getting my aerobic capacity up.
100%. And I'm going to add on to, because that covered the exercise science portion of today's talk and the physical portion of today's talk. And the last part is the neural component to train your endurance and capacity. if you want to make a big gain in that, you really have to push into the area of when your brain is telling you that you cannot keep going anymore. And Brandy's doing that right now with her training, and it is tough training to do that, because your brain, and there's a good research backing this, is that we self-limit our pace. We tell ourselves that we're not able to do this and we can't keep going before our body can actually do that. There's this one study that I'll share with you that I was sharing with some special operators in the military, of people running a triathlon. And they ran the triathlon and they took their times. And then what they did is they created an avatar next to them. And they said, this avatar is pacing you the same exact pace that you did on your best effort in your time trial. And I said, great. So they ran with that avatar, the computer generated pacer. And they did not know that that avatar was 3% faster than their time trial. They completed it, but subjectively reported that they felt the exact same as the previous one, because they did not know that the pace had been increased. So that shows us that we have a self-limiting pacer in our brain, that we have to break that barrier if we want to improve capacity and endurance and keep leveling up. And working at lactate threshold is very uncomfortable. Your brain's going to tell you a bunch of things to try to get you to stop. And it takes courage and it takes effort and it takes discipline to say, nope, I'm right where I need to be. I'm going to teeter with this line. I'm not going to go to the point where I'm yakking and vomiting everywhere, but I'm going to teeter with that line and see how long can I hang on to this, especially if you're training for a competition. If you're training for not competition and health reasons, well, the conversation changes a little bit.
Sure.